Idris Elba says the idea of playing James Bond became, quote, disgusting and off-putting because it became about race. Before we get into Elba's comments, I do want to give some backstory and context that Elba was indeed seemingly considered for the role of James Bond by Barbara Broccoli, the James Bond producer. This is what she had to say to Deadline. She said, well, we know Idris. I'm friends with him, and he's a magnificent actor. It's been part of the conversation, but it's always difficult to have the conversation when you have someone in the seat, referring to Daniel Craig. I think we have decided that until No Time to Die has kind of had his run, and Daniel has been able to, well, we've all been able to reap the benefits of Daniel's wonderful tenure. We're not going to think about or talk about anybody else, actors to play the role, or storylines, or anything really. We just want to live in the moment, the present. Interestingly enough, she did say that the next James Bond doesn't need to be a white man, not as far as I'm concerned. She said that to Total Film back in 2020. So let's get into Elba's comments here. He made an appearance on the Smartless podcast where he said, the truth is I was super complimented for a long time about this. I was like, this is crazy. James Bond, we're all actors and we understand that role. It's one of those coveted roles. Being asked to be James Bond was like, okay, you've sort of reached the pinnacle. That's kind of one of those things the whole world sort of has a vote in. Essentially, it was a huge sort of compliment that every corner of the world, except for some corners, which we will not talk about, were really happy about the idea that I could be considered. I'll talk about it. I'm one of those corners because I don't think he looks like the character and he shouldn't be the character. But anyways, he says, those that weren't happy about the idea made the whole thing disgusting and off-putting because it became about race, it became about nonsense, and I got the brunt of it. Well, yes, it's going to become about race because if we're being honest here, you don't look like James Bond. You do not look like the character that Ian Fleming created. You don't look like the character that everyone has kind of seen as James Bond, whether that's Sean Connery, whether that's Daniel Craig, whether that's Pierce Brosnan. They have a certain look to them, and just pointing out the matter here, Idris Elba doesn't look like those guys. He doesn't look like James Bond. And if you think I'm being ridiculous here, let's read what Ian Fleming wrote, how he described James Bond. This is from the original novel Casino Royale. As he tied his thin, double-ended black satin tie, he paused for a moment and examined himself levelly in the mirror. His gray-blue eyes looked calmly back with a hint of ironical inquiry, and the short lock of black hair, which would never stay in place, slowly subsided to form a thick comma above his right eyebrow. With the vertical scar down his right cheek, the general effect was faintly piratical. Not much of Hoagie Carmichael there, thought Bond, as he filled a flat, light gunmetal box with 50 of the Moreland cigarettes with the triple gold band. Mathis had told him of the girl's comment, so that's referring to a previous part in the novel where he was described as Hoagie Carmichael. This is what Hoagie Carmichael looks like. He was an American jazz composer and actor. You can see here he doesn't look anything like Idris Elba. And if you think that that's going too far, well, here's the first 1955 paperback edition of Casino Royale, published by Pan Macmillan. And there you have James Bond. Doesn't look anything like Idris Elba. So he can complain all he wants about it becoming off-putting and everything like that, but he never should have even been considered for the role. He shouldn't have considered it because he should, I think, in my opinion, have more respect for himself that that's not a role he would want to play because he doesn't look like the character. He just doesn't. And he shouldn't want that character. So he's done a great job with Luther. Really good job with that. Very kind of similar type character to James Bond. Even maybe a little bit more grimier, dirtier than Bond. But also like who is Idris Elba to complain here? Because back in 2018, he was the one calling for radical changes to James Bond. This is what he told Variety. There's no such thing as a black Bond. Are we interested in having a Bond character other than being a male? It could be a woman, could be a black woman, could be a white woman. I think that character, everybody would like to see it, do something different with it. Why not? So this guy doesn't even care about James Bond, doesn't care at all about it. He's all about just like completely changing the character. And he has the gall to say, woe is me. I was disgusted by that when he here is throwing the first lobs about he just wants the character completely changed. So honestly, I don't really have any sympathy for him. He shouldn't have been considered for James Bond in the first place. But Hollywood does what Hollywood does.